It was one of those chilly mornings when everything feels a bit off, like the universe is quietly testing people's hearts. The hospital waiting room buzzed with the usual rhythm, nurses calling names, phones ringing, and the soft murmur of worried families. But in the middle of all this was something no one expected. A black woman, clearly in distress, stood at the front desk holding her side, pain written all over her face. Her breaths were short, her voice shaky, yet the nurse behind the counter barely looked up. "I need help, please," the woman whispered, her words almost drowned out by the noise. She was wearing an oversized coat and looked like she had been through a lot even before stepping into the hospital. But the nurse, a woman in her mid-40s with cold eyes and an even colder tone, simply replied, "You'll have to wait. We're busy." No sense of urgency, no empathy, not even a glance to check how serious her condition was. People nearby noticed, but no one said anything. Some looked away. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The woman tried to stay standing, but her knees buckled slightly. Still, the nurse didn't move. No one came forward. She reached out to the counter, trying to steady herself, but her fingers trembled. "Please," she said again, barely able to stay upright. Then, just as it seemed she would collapse, the hospital doors opened, and in walked a man in an expensive coat, calm but with purpose in his step. Staff immediately took notice. Nurses stood straighter. Doctors nodded with respect. He wasn't just any visitor. He was the owner of the hospital. And in an instant, everything changed. The nurse at the desk turned pale the moment she recognized him. Her expression shifted from indifference to panic. But before anyone could react, the man rushed over to the struggling woman. Without hesitation, he held her by the arm and gently guided her to a seat. "Get me a doctor here." "Now," he said, his voice low but powerful. The staff scattered into motion like a fire had been lit under them. The woman looked up, confused and in pain. Her eyes searched his face, and something familiar flickered in her expression. But the bigger surprise was still hidden in his. Because this wasn't just about hospital protocol or even doing the right thing. This was personal. And the nurse, now frozen behind the desk, was starting to realize just how big of a mistake she'd made. A few blocks away, a city bus had just stopped at a busy intersection. Among the passengers was a black teenager named Malik, around 17, wearing a school backpack and headphones draped around his neck. He wasn't rich. His clothes were simple. He sat quietly, looking out the window, trying to block out the noise of the world. Across from him, a pregnant white woman boarded, one hand on her belly, the other holding the pole for balance. The bus was packed. No seats left. She looked around, exhausted. No one moved. Some pretended not to see her. A few passengers even rolled their eyes. Malik noticed. He sighed, took off his headphones, and stood up. "Ma'am, you can have my seat," he said softly. She hesitated at first, surprised. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice tired but kind. He smiled. "Yeah, I'm good. You need it more than I do." She sat down carefully, letting out a breath of relief. "Thank you. Not many people would do that." Malik just shrugged, standing quietly near the door, holding the metal rail as the bus moved forward. The rest of the ride was mostly silent. But as the bus neared her stop, the woman reached into her bag, pulled out a small envelope, and handed it to Malik. "Open this when you get off," she said with a soft smile. "It's something I think you deserve." He looked confused, but nodded, slipping it into his pocket. The bus stopped. She stepped off slowly. He watched her go, not knowing that what was inside that envelope would flip his world upside down. And as Malik stepped off at a stop and unfolded the note, his eyes widened. His hands began to shake. The wind blew softly around him, but he didn't feel the cold anymore. What he read would lead him to a place he never imagined, and somehow tie his life to that woman in the hospital in ways no one could see coming. But right now, all he could do was stand there, staring at the words, trying to process what they meant. Something big had just begun. Something that would test kindness, challenge bias, and expose secrets buried deep beneath the surface. And at the heart of it all were two simple moments of choice, one cruel, one kind, that would collide in a way none of them could have expected. Malik stood frozen at the bus stop, the crumpled note still open in his hand. His eyes traced the words over and over again, like maybe he'd read them wrong the first time. But no matter how many times he looked, they stayed the same. Meet me at the address below. Your future is about to change. There was a name signed at the bottom, a name he didn't recognize, Claire Whitmore. And below that, a street name in a part of the city he'd only heard about. Rich side. Mansions. Places he didn't belong. He looked around. Cars passed. People walked by, lost in their own thoughts. No one knew what was happening in his world at that moment. It was like he was in a different space altogether. He tucked the note back into his pocket and slowly walked toward home, each step heavier than the last. Part of him was curious, drawn to the mystery. But another part was nervous. Why would a woman he didn't know hand him a note like that? What did she mean by his future changing? Back at the hospital, the woman in pain had been rushed into a room. Her name was Alana. The man who helped her, the hospital owner, stayed by her side the whole time, holding her hand as doctors examined her. He didn't say much, just watched with deep concern in his eyes. The staff whispered quietly in the hallway, trying to piece things together. Some of them were scared. Others just confused. The nurse who had turned Alana away stood at her station, pale and shaking. Her hands fiddled with papers that didn't need organizing. She could feel everyone's eyes on her, but it wasn't just embarrassment she felt. It was fear. Because she had just treated the wrong person the wrong way. And it was clear now this wasn't just about a patient. There was history here. In the examination room, Alana's breathing had steadied, but her face still showed the wear of too many hard days. She looked up at the man beside her, searching for answers. "Why are you here?" she asked softly. He looked at her, his jaw tight. "I should ask you the same." She blinked, her eyes filling with something between pain and confusion. "I didn't know this was your hospital." "You shouldn't have to know," he replied. "You should have been treated with respect, no matter who you are." Their eyes locked for a moment, and it was clear there was something unspoken between them. Not just recent pain, but a past. One with chapters that hadn't been closed. Meanwhile, Malik sat in his small bedroom, staring at the note again. The walls around him were thin. His younger sister played music softly in the next room, and his mom was in the kitchen making dinner. He could smell rice and something frying, but he couldn't think about food. All he could see was that name, Claire Whitmore. It sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. He opened his laptop and searched the name. A few results popped up. One was from a news site, a photo of the same woman from the bus, smiling next to a man in a suit. The headline read, "Whitmore Foundation donates $10 million to youth education program." Malik's heart started pounding. She wasn't just a random woman. She was someone powerful. Someone connected. He clicked through more links, reading quickly. Claire Whitmore was part of a wealthy family. Her husband ran several businesses. She worked in charity, mostly helping kids from underprivileged backgrounds. One article mentioned how she used to volunteer at schools in low-income neighborhoods. Maybe that's how she'd ended up on that bus. Maybe she still believed in meeting people where they were. Still, why him? Why that note? He looked down at his hands, then around the room. He thought about his mother, working double shifts. His dad had passed years ago, and Malik had taken on more than most kids his age. He never complained, just kept moving. He got good grades, stayed out of trouble, but the world didn't often reward that. Not where he came from. So the idea that someone like Claire Whitmore saw him, really saw him, was unsettling. Back at the hospital, the mood had shifted. Alana was stable, resting in the room. The man who stayed by her side, his name was Marcus, stepped out into the hallway. He gave quick orders to the staff, checking on her care, ensuring she was getting the best treatment. No one questioned him. Not anymore. The nurse tried to apologize, but he walked right past her. Not out of cruelty, but out of disappointment too deep to be smoothed over with a few words. He had trusted his team to care for people equally. And what he had just witnessed shook something inside him. Later, When he sat alone in his office, he stared at an old photo on his desk. In it, a younger Alana stood beside him, smiling. It had been taken years ago, back when things were different, back when their lives were connected in ways no one else knew. The silence in the room was loud. Memories pressed in like shadows. He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and exhaled. Things were about to come full circle. He just didn't know how yet. Across town, Malik folded the note again and placed it under his pillow. He couldn't sleep. The questions were too loud. What if this was some kind of setup? What if it was real? Was it safe to go? What would he say if she actually remembered him? He glanced at the address again. It wasn't far, just a short train ride. But in his world, it might as well have been another planet. And somewhere in the middle of the city, as night quietly took over, lives that had no reason to cross were now tangled together by a single act of kindness and a single moment of neglect. Nothing had been resolved. The answers were still hidden. But one thing was clear, this wasn't just a story about hospital hallways or crowded buses. It was about something bigger. Something brewing just beneath the surface. And it was far from over. The next morning came with gray clouds hanging low, like the sky was waiting for something to break. Malik hadn't slept much. The note sat on his desk now, next to his school books. He kept glancing at it while brushing his teeth, packing his bag, tying his shoes. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting around him, like the world had cracked open just a little, letting in the unknown. At breakfast, his mom was busy with the usual routine: eggs on the stove, toast in the oven, her hands moving fast but her face tired. "You're quiet this morning," she said without looking up. Malik paused, then just shrugged. "Just tired." She didn't press. She was used to his quiet. But if she had known what was running through his head, the note, the woman, the name Claire Whitmore, she would have asked more questions. Maybe even warned him. Later that afternoon, Malik made a choice. He skipped his last class and got on the train. His heart thumped the whole ride. The address led to a quiet neighborhood where the sidewalks were clean and the houses looked like they came out of magazines. When he arrived at the gate, he hesitated. The property was massive. Trees lined the edge of a curved driveway, and a sleek silver car was parked near the front steps. He thought about turning back. What if this was a mistake? But before he could move, the front door opened. Claire stepped out slowly, surprised but smiling when she saw him. "You came." He nodded, unsure of what to say. She motioned for him to come in. "Let's talk. There's something I want to show you." Inside the house was quiet, tasteful, warm. Pictures of family lined the walls, some with Claire and her husband, others with kids he didn't recognize. Everything looked perfect, but Malik could feel there was more going on underneath. They sat in a sunlit room with large windows facing the garden. Claire handed him a folder. "Before I explain anything, I want you to see this," she said gently. Inside were photos, documents, letters. His name was on one of them. Malik stared, confused. "What is this?" Claire took a breath. "It's your scholarship file. We have a program for students like you, bright, responsible, overlooked. I've been working with your school. Your teachers nominated you weeks ago. I was supposed to reach out officially next month, but after what happened on the bus, I knew I had to do it sooner. You showed me something rare that day. Kindness, without expectation." Malik was stunned. He didn't know what to say. But even as hope stirred in him, another feeling crept in. "Why me?" he asked. "There are tons of kids like me. Nobody ever notices." Claire looked at him and said something he didn't expect. "I've been trying to notice more, especially after everything that happened with my husband." Her words hung in the air, thick with implication. Malik looked at her. "Your husband?" She nodded slowly. "Marcus Whitmore. He owns Whitmore Medical and the hospital." The hospital? Malik's thoughts suddenly connected like pieces of a puzzle. The name, the man helping the woman. It was all part of the same story. He leaned back, stunned. "Wait, so you're saying he was the one who helped that woman yesterday?" Claire nodded again, her expression tight. "Yes." And that woman, she's part of his past. More than I knew. And now, things are complicated. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Alana sat in her room staring out the window. The view wasn't much, just a patch of parking lot and a tree trying to bloom too early. But her mind was far away. Her thoughts kept drifting back to Marcus, how he had looked at her, how his presence had calmed her and confused her all at once. She hadn't seen him in years. Not since things fell apart. Not since he chose his career over her. And yet when she saw him again, it was like no time had passed. The pain was still there, sitting just under the surface. She wasn't sure what hurt more, his silence all those years, or the fact that he still rushed to help her like nothing had changed. Nurses now treated her differently. Everyone did. They smiled more, checked in more often. She hated it, because it reminded her that it wasn't kindness. They were afraid. Afraid because Marcus had made them realize who she was to him. Down the hall, Marcus stood in the staff conference room, staring at the security footage of the previous day. He watched the moment Alana walked in pain. Watched the nurse ignore her. Watched himself burst through the doors seconds later. He couldn't stop thinking about what could have happened if he hadn't arrived when he did. He looked up as a colleague walked in, a woman named Dr. Keating. She had known him for years. "You're not yourself," she said gently. Marcus rubbed his eyes. "I didn't know she was still in the city." "She didn't come here by chance," Dr. Keating said. "There's a reason." He nodded. "I just don't know what it is yet." Later that day, Malik sat in Claire's living room holding the scholarship file in his lap, still feeling the weight of everything she'd told him. He was grateful. But something about her words, her expressions, felt guarded. Like she was leaving things out. "Does your husband know about me?" he asked. Claire hesitated, then said quietly, "Not yet. But I think you're going to meet him soon." Malik didn't know what that meant. But something in her tone made him uneasy. As he stepped outside into the late afternoon light, a sleek black car pulled into the driveway. The driver stepped out. A man in a dark coat. Tall. Strong presence. Malik recognized him instantly, from news photos, from Claire's walls, from the hospital. Marcus Whitmore. He paused when he saw Malik. Malik stood still, his heart pounding. Neither of them spoke. But they both knew the story was no longer simple. Their worlds were already tangled. And the truth, whatever it was getting closer. Malik stood frozen in Claire Whitmore's driveway, his heart racing. The man who stepped out of the black car was none other than Marcus Whitmore, the same man who had rushed into the hospital yesterday and saved Alana. The same man whose name had haunted the edges of the story, now standing in front of him like a shadow that had finally caught up. Marcus's eyes met Malik's, and for a brief moment, the two simply stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken understanding. Malik had no idea what was happening, but everything about the situation screamed that it was bigger than he could comprehend. "Malik, this is my husband Marcus," Claire said, her voice tight, almost rehearsed. "Marcus, this is the boy I told you about." Marcus nodded slightly, but there was something in his eyes that made Malik take a step back. The man was calculating, like he was assessing every inch of Malik's being. "You're the one who gave up your seat on the bus," he said, his voice low but not unkind. Malik didn't respond immediately. He was too stunned to speak, the words tangled in his throat. He had no idea what was happening or why Marcus was here now. But his instincts told him that this moment would change everything. Claire watched them both carefully, as if waiting for something. Her expression was a mix of worry and resolve, as though she had already been through something. And yet, the hardest part was still to come. "I thought I'd made a mistake," Marcus continued, breaking the silence. "When I saw you in the hospital yesterday, I wasn't sure if I should be grateful or if I should be angry. After all, you're part of a world I've spent years trying to forget." The words hit Malik like a punch to the gut. He didn't know what Marcus meant by that, but the bitterness in his voice left no doubt that there was history here, something dark and unfinished. "Part of a world you've tried to forget?" Malik asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus turned toward Claire, then back at Malik. "You're connected to something I've been trying to distance myself from for a long time," he said. "Your mother, she used to work at the hospital." And you remind me of something I regret. Claire's gaze flickered between the two men, a flicker of guilt in her eyes. Marcus, we've talked about this. Let's not bring it all back. But it was too late. The silence that followed felt suffocating, thick with things that couldn't be ignored any longer. Malik's mind raced as pieces of the puzzle clicked together in his head. His mother had worked at the hospital, and this man, this powerful figure, was connected to her somehow? He felt the ground shift beneath him, like the world he knew had just cracked open. I don't know what you're talking about, Malik said, his voice shaky but determined. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask to be part of your world. Marcus's expression softened for a moment, but then the weight of his words hit harder than before. You're part of something much bigger than you think, he said. You don't even know the half of it. Just as the tension between them grew thick enough to feel suffocating, a phone rang, breaking the moment. Claire's face changed as she pulled out her phone and answered it quickly. Her face paled, and her hand trembled slightly. Marcus, she said urgently after the call ended. It's Alana. She's gone. The words hung in the air for a moment, and everything in the world seemed to still. Malik didn't know who Alana really was, but from the way Marcus's face tightened, he understood that this wasn't just about a hospital patient. This was personal. Marcus's eyes narrowed, and his hand clenched into a fist. I should have known, he muttered under his breath. I should have never let her out of my sight. Marcus. Claire's voice was filled with concern, but there was also a sense of resignation, like she knew something even darker was about to unfold.
She was involved in something.
And now, don't say it, Marcus cut her off, his voice cold as steel. He looked at Malik, his gaze sharp. You need to stay out of this, kid. You've already done enough by showing up here. Don't make the mistake of thinking you can fix this. But Malik wasn't listening. His head was spinning, and every word from Marcus and Claire seemed to be tearing the fabric of the story apart. There was something happening, something that had been set in motion long before he'd ever gotten on that bus. And Alana was the key. I'm not just going to walk away from this, Malik said, his voice shaking but firm. I need to know what's going on. If Alana's gone, if she's connected to all this, then I need answers. Claire's eyes softened as she looked at Malik. I never wanted you to be dragged into this, she said quietly, almost to herself. But it's too late now. Everything you're asking is a part of something much bigger. And I can't protect you from it. Malik's chest tightened. He had no idea what he was stepping into, but there was something inside him, something stronger than fear, that told him he couldn't back down now. Marcus glanced at him one last time, his expression unreadable. You don't understand, he said. This isn't a story you get to finish. Some things, some people, you can't fix. The words stung, but Malik didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. Maybe I'm not trying to fix anything. Maybe I just want to know the truth. And with that, the last thread of tension snapped, leaving a chilling silence hanging over the three of them. Somewhere, in the distance, the faintest sound of sirens could be heard. The game was changing, but the rules were about to get a lot more dangerous. Malik stood frozen in Claire Whitmore's driveway, his heart racing. The man who stepped out of the black car was none other than Marcus Whitmore, the same man who had rushed into the hospital yesterday and saved Alana. The same man whose name had haunted the edges of the story, now standing in front of him like a shadow that had finally caught up. Marcus's eyes met Malik's, and for a brief moment, the two simply stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken understanding. Malik had no idea what was happening, but everything about the situation screamed that it was bigger than he could comprehend. Malik, this is my husband Marcus, Claire said, her voice tight, almost rehearsed. Marcus, this is the boy I told you about. Marcus nodded slightly, but there was something in his eyes that made Malik take a step back. The man was calculating, like he was assessing every inch of Malik's being. You're the one who gave up your seat on the bus, he said, his voice low but not unkind. Malik didn't respond immediately. He was too stunned to speak, the words tangled in his throat. He had no idea what was happening or why Marcus was here now. But his instincts told him that this moment would change everything. Claire watched them both carefully, as if waiting for something. Her expression was a mix of worry and resolve, as though she had already been through something. And yet, the hardest part was still to come. "I thought I'd made a mistake," Marcus continued, breaking the silence. "When I saw you in the hospital yesterday, I wasn't sure if I should be grateful or if I should be angry. After all, you're part of a world I've spent years trying to forget." The words hit Malik like a punch to the gut. He didn't know what Marcus meant by that, but the bitterness in his voice left no doubt that there was history here, something dark and unfinished. "Part of a world you've tried to forget?" Malik asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus turned toward Claire, then back at Malik. "You're connected to something I've been trying to distance myself from for a long time," he said. "Your mother, she used to work at the hospital. And you remind me of something I regret." Claire's gaze flickered between the two men, a flicker of guilt in her eyes. "Marcus, we've talked about this. Let's not bring it all back." But it was too late. The silence that followed felt suffocating, thick with things that couldn't be ignored any longer. Malik's mind raced as pieces of the puzzle clicked together in his head. His mother had worked at the hospital? And this man, this powerful figure, was connected to her somehow? He felt the ground shift beneath him, like the world he knew had just cracked open. "I don't know what you're talking about," Malik said, his voice shaky but determined. "I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask to be part of your world." Marcus's expression softened for a moment, but then the weight of his words hit harder than before. "You're part of something much bigger than you think," he said. "You don't even know the half of it." Just as the tension between them grew thick enough to feel suffocating, a phone rang, breaking the moment. Claire's face changed as she pulled out her phone and answered it quickly. Her face paled, and her hand trembled slightly. "Marcus," she said urgently after the call ended. "It's Alana. She's gone." The words hung in the air for a moment, and everything in the world seemed to still. Malik didn't know who Alana really was, but from the way Marcus's face tightened, he understood that this wasn't just about a hospital patient. This was personal. Marcus's eyes narrowed, and his hand clenched into a fist. "I should have known," he muttered under his breath. "I should have never let her out of my sight." "Marcus." Claire's voice was filled with concern, but there was also a sense of resignation, like she knew something even darker was about to unfold.
She was involved in something.
"And now?" "Don't say it," Marcus cut her off, his voice cold as steel. He looked at Malik, his gaze sharp. "You need to stay out of this, kid. You've already done enough by showing up here. Don't make the mistake of thinking you can fix this." But Malik wasn't listening. His head was spinning, and every word from Marcus and Claire seemed to be tearing the fabric of the story apart. There was something happening, something that had been set in motion long before he'd ever gotten on that bus. And Alana was the key. "I'm not just going to walk away from this," Malik said, his voice shaking but firm. "I need to know what's going on. If Alana's gone, if she's connected to all this, then I need answers." Claire's eyes softened as she looked at Malik. "I never wanted you to be dragged into this," she said quietly, almost to herself. "But it's too late now. Everything you're asking is a part of something much bigger. And I can't protect you from it." Malik's chest tightened. He had no idea what he was stepping into, but there was something inside him, something stronger than fear, that told him he couldn't back down now. Marcus glanced at him one last time, his expression unreadable. "You don't understand," he said. "This isn't a story you get to finish. Some things, some people, you can't fix." The words stung, but Malik didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "Maybe I'm not trying to fix anything. Maybe I just want to know the truth." And with that, the last thread of tension snapped, leaving a chilling silence hanging over the three of them. Somewhere, in the distance, the faintest sound of sirens could be heard. The game was changing, but the rules were about to get a lot more dangerous. The sirens grew louder, slicing through the heavy silence in the air. Marcus's face darkened, his jaw tightening with a barely contained fury. He turned sharply, walking towards the door as if every second mattered. "This isn't a game, Malik," he called back over his shoulder. You don't know what you're getting into. Malik stood frozen, his mind racing, but something in his gut told him he couldn't back down now. He had to know more. There was no way he could walk away, not after everything that had been said. Claire's anxious eyes flicked to him, then to the door, as if torn between keeping him safe and revealing everything she knew. Suddenly, the sound of a loud knock echoed through the front of the house, sharp and insistent. Marcus stopped in his tracks. The knock came again, followed by the unmistakable thud of a heavy door opening. "Who is it?" Claire asked, her voice trembling. Marcus didn't answer, his entire body rigid as he stalked to the hallway. Malik's heart pounded as he followed behind, unsure of what he was about to walk into. The air felt thick with tension, and the closer they got to the door, the more uneasy Malik became. There was something happening here, something much darker than he could have ever imagined. Marcus flung the door open, revealing two men standing on the other side. They were dressed in dark suits, their expressions unreadable. One of them was holding a large envelope, his face hidden beneath the brim of his hat. "What's going on?" Marcus's voice was dangerously calm, but there was a flicker of panic in his eyes that didn't go unnoticed by Malik. "We need to speak with you, Marcus," one of the men said, his voice low, firm. Marcus took a step back, his eyes narrowing. "Not now." The man holding the envelope stepped forward. "It's about Alana," he said, his tone grave. "We have information. You need to see this." Marcus hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside, gesturing for the men to enter. The moment they crossed the threshold, the atmosphere shifted, as if a weight had been dropped onto the house. Malik stood in the doorway, his mind racing. Alana. Her name echoed in his mind, but the deeper he got into this tangled web, the more he realized there were things he wasn't being told. The man with the envelope pulled out several documents, placing them carefully on the coffee table. "We've been tracking Alana's movements for the past month," the man began, his voice cold. "She was working with someone you wouldn't expect." Marcus's eyes flickered with a mix of disbelief and anger. "What are you talking about?" The man paused before pushing the papers toward Marcus. "She wasn't just a victim in all of this. She's been playing both sides. We've got evidence." Malik's heart skipped a beat. What was happening? He felt a cold chill crawl down his spine. Alana, the woman who had seemed so vulnerable, the one who had been helped by Marcus, was now being painted as someone with a hidden agenda. Marcus grabbed the papers, his fingers trembling as he scanned through them. His face contorted as he read, and Malik could see the conflict in his eyes. Hurt, confusion, and betrayal. "No," Marcus muttered, barely audible. "This can't be, not Alana. She wouldn't." But the man who had spoken earlier wasn't done. "She's been tied to a group that's been making moves in the city. People who don't take kindly to anyone getting in their way." "What group?" Claire demanded, her voice rising with concern. "Who are you talking about?" The second man spoke for the first time. "It's a criminal network that's been using the hospital as a front for their operations. Alana was one of their key players, working under the radar. She was helping them launder money through the medical bills." Malik's head spun as the weight of the revelation hit him. The hospital, his mother. It all started to connect in ways he wasn't ready for. Everything he thought he knew about Alana, the kindness, the vulnerability, was being shattered right in front of him. Marcus stood up abruptly, his face pale. "This can't be true. She was just here to help." He turned to Claire, searching her eyes for some reassurance, but there was only fear reflected back at him. She didn't say anything, but her silence spoke volumes. Malik's mind raced. Alana had been involved in something far deeper than he had ever imagined. But the question gnawing at him was, what was her role in all of this? Had she been forced into it? Or had she been an accomplice all along? Before anyone could speak again, a phone buzzed loudly from the corner of the room. Claire grabbed it, her eyes widening as she read the message. She turned to Marcus, her face stricken. "It's the police," she whispered. "They've found her." The room went still. Malik's heart hammered in his chest. What did that mean? Why were the police involved now? Was Alana in danger? Or was she a danger to them all? Marcus was already moving, pacing back and forth. His hands clenched into fists. This was supposed to be over, he muttered to himself. I should have handled this years ago. Now we're all involved. Claire reached for his arm, trying to steady him. We don't know everything yet. We need to wait for the facts. But Marcus was already on the move. We don't have time for that, he snapped. They'll come for us next. We need to deal with this now. Malik felt a surge of panic. What was going on? Who were they running from? What did this have to do with him? Before he could ask another question, Marcus turned to him. His eyes were filled with determination, but there was something else. Something darker. I warned you, Marcus said. You can walk away now, Malik. But if you stay, there's no going back. Are you ready for that? Malik didn't hesitate. He had already come too far to back out now. I'm not going anywhere. Marcus's expression softened for a moment, but then his eyes grew colder. Then let's go. It's about to get dangerous. As they stepped out of the house, the distant sound of sirens grew louder. And in that moment, Malik knew that nothing would ever be the same again. They were walking into a storm, and no one knew how it would end. The night was alive with the sound of sirens, the streets flashing with red and blue lights as they sped through the quiet neighborhood. Malik sat in the back of Marcus's car, his hands shaking but his mind more focused than it had ever been. He had no idea where they were going, but he knew one thing for sure. This was the point of no return. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of secrets that had been building for years, and now, everything was about to unravel. Marcus's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. He hadn't said a word since they left Claire's house, his eyes straight ahead, his jaw clenched. Claire was silent beside him, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Malik could see the fear in her eyes, but he could also see something else, a sense of resolve. Whatever was coming next, she was ready for it. They pulled up to a nondescript building, tucked away in an industrial part of town. The place looked abandoned, its windows dark and its entrance almost hidden. Marcus parked the car, and without a word, they all got out, moving quickly, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the empty street. Malik's heart was pounding as they approached the door. He could feel the weight of everything pressing on him, the truth about Alana, the secrets about Marcus's past, and now, the looming presence of whatever was waiting inside. His mind raced, wondering what kind of danger they were about to walk into. Marcus pushed open the door, and they stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, its walls lined with old filing cabinets and boxes. In the center of the room, a large table sat, covered with papers, maps, and photographs. A figure stood at the far end of the table, facing away from them. You're late, the figure said, his voice low and calm. He turned slowly, and Malik's breath caught in his throat. It was Alana, but she didn't look like the woman he had seen in the hospital. She was different now, darker, colder, her eyes hard and unblinking. Her face was pale, but her expression was one of complete control. Alana? Marcus's voice cracked as he spoke her name, disbelief and anger in his tone. What the hell is going on? Why are you doing this? Alana didn't answer immediately. She stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. I've been waiting for you, Marcus, she said, her voice smooth, almost mocking. I thought it would be you who showed up first. You always were the one with the answers. Malik felt his stomach drop. He had no idea what was happening, but he could sense that this was the moment everything changed. Alana, the woman who had seemed so vulnerable, so lost, was now standing before them as someone entirely different. But what had happened to her? What had led her to this? I don't understand, Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. Why would you betray me like this? After everything I did for you? Alana's lips curled into a smile, but there was no warmth in it. You never understood, did you, Marcus? You thought you could control everything, protect everyone, but you missed something crucial.
You missed me.
You missed us. Marcus took a step back, his face a mask of confusion and hurt. Us? What the hell are you talking about? Alana motioned to the table behind her. Malik's eyes flicked to the documents spread across it, Photographs of hospital employees, lists of names, and hidden accounts. There were files on Marcus, Claire, and even Malik's mother. Everything had been meticulously documented. "You've been part of something bigger than you ever realized, Marcus," Alana continued, her voice cold and steady. "The hospital, the money laundering, the fake charity work, it's all connected. But it wasn't just me working behind the scenes. There were others, people you trusted. And now, we've decided it's time for a change." Malik's head spun as he tried to process what she was saying. The hospital wasn't just a place for healing, it had been a cover, a front for something far more sinister. But why had Alana been involved? Why had she betrayed Marcus? And what was her endgame? "You've been living a lie, Marcus," Alana said, her eyes flashing with something dangerous. "All your good deeds, all your work, it's all part of a bigger plan. You were never the hero. You were just a pawn." Marcus's face twisted in anger and disbelief.
No.
"This can't be true. It can't be." "I didn't." "You didn't see it," Alana interrupted, her voice rising. "You were too busy playing the savior. But the truth is, I've always been the one pulling the strings. And now it's my turn." The room was silent for a moment, the tension thick enough to choke on. Malik stood frozen, his mind reeling. But then something clicked inside him, something he hadn't fully understood until this moment. "You don't get it, do you?" Alana said, turning her gaze on Malik. "I didn't just come here to finish things with Marcus. I came here for you." Malik's heart skipped a beat. "Me?" "Yes," Alana said, her smile widening. "You're the missing piece. The one who can take this all to the next level. You're the key to everything." Marcus stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You've lost your mind, Alana." But Alana wasn't listening. She was too focused on Malik. "Don't you see? This isn't just about money. It's about control. It's about taking back what was always meant to be ours. And you've been chosen." Suddenly, Malik understood. Alana had been grooming him, manipulating him all along, starting with the bus ride. The note, the scholarship, the sudden interest in his life. It had all been a plan to pull him in, to make him a part of something much darker than he could have ever imagined. Before he could process what he was hearing, there was a loud crash from the door. The sound of footsteps echoed through the room. A new figure stepped inside, one that made everyone freeze. It was the last person Malik expected, his mother. She walked into the room, her face calm, but her eyes were full of secrets. "You're too late," she said, her voice steady as she looked at Marcus. "This has been in the works for years. And now, Malik, it's time for you to take your place." The final twist hit Malik like a punch to the gut. Everything he had thought he knew, everything he believed about his family, his past, was a lie. His mother, the woman who had worked at the hospital, was part of this from the very beginning. He felt the ground shift beneath him, and for the first time, he truly understood the weight of the choices ahead of him. The world he had known was gone. And now he was standing at the crossroads, with no way to go back. The stakes had never been higher. The game was over. The real fight was just beginning. Malik's head spun as his mother stood there, calm and composed, like she had been a part of this dark plan all along. He couldn't breathe, couldn't make sense of what he was hearing. His whole life, his mother's warm embrace, the late-night talks, the comfort of her presence, had been a lie. She was a player in this twisted game, and he had never seen it coming. His mother's gaze met his, her eyes holding an unsettling calmness. "I didn't want you to find out this way, Malik," she said softly, as if they were discussing something as mundane as the weather. "But the truth is, we've been preparing you for this moment your whole life." Marcus took a step forward, his face a mix of disbelief and rage. "This isn't possible. You were a nurse. You were supposed to be the one helping people." "Not," he trailed off, unable to find the words. Malik's chest tightened. He couldn't process the weight of the revelation. His mother, the woman who had raised him, who had always been his anchor, had been in on this all along. "Why, Mom?" His voice cracked with a question. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me choose?" His mother's expression softened for a moment, but only for a second. I didn't want to burden you with all of this. You were supposed to have a better life, a life outside of all this mess.
But you're too important to ignore now, Malik.
You have a role to play. He shook his head, the pieces of the puzzle slowly coming together, but they felt more like shards of broken glass cutting through him. A role? What do you mean? What do you want from me? Alana stepped forward, her eyes glinting with the same cold intensity. You're part of the family now, Malik. You've always been a part of it and you don't even know it. We need someone who can take over. You're the one who can take everything we've built and move it to the next level. Marcus was seething. This is madness. This is my hospital. My life's work. But Alana's expression was unshaken. No, Marcus. It was never your work. It was our work. And now, it's time for you to step aside. The room felt suffocating as the tension built. Malik looked from his mother to Alana, then back to Marcus. His mind was a whirlwind, every thought crashing into another, but one thing was clear. This was more than just betrayal. This was power.
Control.
And it was being handed to him on a silver platter, whether he wanted it or not. Malik, his mother said again, her voice soft but firm. I did this for you. This world you're being brought into, it's not one you can walk away from. But you're ready for it. I know you are. His heart raced in his chest. His mother had always been his protector, the one person he trusted above all others. But now, all he felt was a sense of isolation. The truth had shattered everything.
Who was she really?
Who was he in all of this? He thought about the life he had built for himself, the life he had fought to escape from the shadows of his past. But now, it felt like those shadows were following him, no matter how fast he ran. Your mother's right, Alana added, her voice like ice. You don't have a choice. The moment you walked into that hospital, you became a part of this. The sooner you accept it, the better. Malik's mind was reeling, but his gut told him there was something more. He had to make a choice. A real choice. This wasn't just about family, or betrayal, or power. This was about who he was, and who he wanted to be. The stakes had never been higher. I'm not like you, Malik finally said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside him. I'm not part of your world. Marcus looked at him with a mixture of surprise and something else. Relief, perhaps. Then walk away, Malik. You don't have to do this. But Malik knew it wasn't that simple. His mother and Alana had already made their move. He was already too far in. There was no turning back. The silence in the room was broken by a sudden loud bang from the other side of the building. The door crashed open, and officers flooded into the room, their badges gleaming in the low light. Malik's heart skipped a beat as he recognized the lead officer, the one who had been investigating the hospital's dark secrets for months. Everyone, stay where you are, the officer barked, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. We have you surrounded. Marcus's face drained of color. What is this? He demanded. Who tipped you off? Malik's mother, for the first time, seemed unsure. She glanced at Alana, who stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. This wasn't supposed to happen, she muttered under her breath, her eyes flicking around the room like a trapped animal looking for an escape. Malik felt a surge of anger rise within him. This was it, the final twist, the moment when everything unraveled. He had been manipulated, lied to, and dragged into this mess without ever having a say. But now, the tables were turning. The police were here, and everything was coming to light. I didn't ask for this, Malik said, his voice clear and strong. I didn't ask to be part of your world. But I'm done now. As the officers moved to handcuff Alana and his mother, Malik stepped back, his mind made up. He couldn't stay in this world. He couldn't be a part of the lies and the manipulation anymore. There was still time to rebuild, still time to escape. The choice was his now. As his mother was led away, her eyes met his for the last time, and there was a fleeting moment of something. Regret. Maybe. But it was gone just as quickly as it had appeared. Malik turned to Marcus, who gave him a small, weary nod. You did the right thing, Marcus said quietly. Now, you can make your own path. A real one. Malik took a deep breath, the weight of the last few hours settling in his chest.
He was free.
Free to rebuild his life, free to become who he was meant to be. The past was gone, and he could finally move forward. As he stepped out into the cool night air, Malik looked up at the stars, the quiet of the world around him a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. He had faced the truth, faced the darkness, and now he was ready to embrace the light. And for the first time in a long time, Malik felt hope, real hope, that the future, no matter how uncertain, was his to shape.